It's the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Adam Bittner, joined by Christopher Carter. We are talking losers from Steelers training camp, guys who maybe we had higher expectations for going into training camp, who didn't quite live up to them for one reason or another. I think injury is going to be part of this conversation as well. So it's not just a matter of performance, it's a matter of missed opportunity for some of these guys. So we're going to review that now that Steelers training camp at Saint Vincent College has ended and they're moving back to the facility into the joint practices with Tampa Bay heading into the second preseason game. Chris, excited to dig into that with you. Before we do, we want to thank another sponsor. It's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci, Pittsburgh's mesothelioma and asbestos attorneys, standing up for victims of mesothelioma and asbestos cancers with over 85 years of experience. They know how to uncover the truth. They have the experience you need and the commitment your family deserves. They've recovered millions for individuals affected by mesothelioma and other cancers due to asbestos exposure. Call them toll-free at 1-877-227-6558 or online at sdklaw.com. Chris, the first question I wanted to ask you about in terms of losers from Steelers training camp is Robert Woods. Scotty Miller was a name that ascended. Robert Woods is a name that seems to now be on the outside looking in as we're making our 53-man roster projections. What happened with Robert Woods for him to go from a signing that, people, it wasn't just a depth signing that people kind of glossed over. People saw the Steelers sign Robert Woods and said, okay, that could be a guy that could fit into this receivers room. What happened with him?
I think Robert Woods didn't even do anything wrong. I just think that the other guys really stepped up and showed some things here. I think Robert Woods was brought in in a way that put him in a spot that the Steelers didn't need the way they needed the last few years. You think I think that he was this year's version of Van Jefferson or Allen Robinson, two veteran receivers the Steelers have brought in, partially because they felt there was no veteran leadership in the wide receiver room, whether it was Deontay Johnson or George Pickens. Maturity was a concern in those years for the leadership of the room, and so those guys could come in and be like, "Hey, I'm the heady veteran that has made a career in the NFL. I may be on the tail end of my career, but I'm respectful and I know how to be good in the locker room, and I can help with that regard." The Steelers don't need that role anymore because DK Metcalf leads the room, and DK Metcalf is a very good professional. He handles himself with class. I just think that there's a lot that different about this receiver room now. You have two young up and coming guys like Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson that they're definitely going to use. Scotty Miller just had a really good camp where I thought he just connected better than Robert Woods, and he's also faster than Robert Woods. And so I just think Robert Woods is at a part of his career where he doesn't have the assets that he used to. And this is a guy that's been a very good receiver for his career in the NFL, but I think that it's less about him and more so about they saw better things than other guys. And so the only way Robert Woods sticks around is if they keep 6 wide receivers and they think that they just need him as that extra body there. But, he's going to probably have to fill a role in special teams to also get that chance.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if they just want to keep him in the room in the event of you figure that you're going to have an injury. You've already had an injury with Calvin Austin. So do you want to have the steady hand of a veteran like Robert Woods around for when that happens? Mixed results. You mentioned Allen Robinson, those types of guys they brought in. There's been mixed results with them. So we'll be watching what decision they make in terms of the roster there. Chris, another name I wanted to ask about was Cory Trice Jr. He's a guy that the Steelers have seemed to want to work out pretty badly for a 7th-round pick. They've given him opportunity after opportunity. It's not so much that he hasn't met it per se. It's just that he hasn't been available. And in the NFL, you only get so long to prove you can stay on the field. Cory Trice, 47th-round pick, has gotten a lot of opportunities to prove he can stay on the field, has not been able to. Where does he stand? I think he's definitely a loser in terms of this training camp. Is he still in the Steelers' plans at all? Are we talking about the practice squad? What's going on there?
I think they're going to try to find a way to keep him, but it's tough because he hasn't practiced in a while, and it's just the injury bug got up to him again, and it's just like, man, this is why I think he was a 7th-round pick. It was just, the way that people were concerned about Peyton Wilson's injuries in college. That's how Cory Trice is looking right now. Is that like he's not able to stay on the field, missed his whole rookie season, missed a lot of last year. Now it's like, okay, cool. He's had that experience. And listen, when Cory Trice is healthy, he looks good out there. He looks the part. He looks like he could be a guy that could eventually become a starter if he was healthy enough, but he's just not healthy enough. And you can't make the club from the tub. That's the classic saying in football. He has to be able to do better or to be healthier. And I don't think that's anything about him. I think it's just bad luck. Sometimes your body wears down when football's a very physical game. But I think Cory Trice, for that reason, has to be listed as a loser because now I'm not sure if they're able to keep him, because right now I know they got 4 cornerbacks that they're definitely keeping in Ramsey, Porter, Slay, and Brandon Eccles, who's I think has had a good camp. He's cemented himself there. But Cory Trice would have been my automatic 5th corner. Now I don't know with him being hurt, because Beanie Bishop is still making some noise. James Pierre has made some plays in training camp. I still think they'll try to keep Cory Trice, but it's a lot tougher of a question than it was at the start of camp.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate for him. You mentioned some of those other guys, Chris. Was there anyone in that depth corner conversation that you think did not help themselves at Steelers training camp? Because there's, like you mentioned, there's a lot of guys in that mix. Beanie Bishop has been up and down, I think, in some people's opinion throughout this camp of whether he's going to make it just because of the presence of Jalen Ramsey. So what's your assessment of those guys that you mentioned, I guess, maybe in a little bit more depth?
I think Beanie Bishop, like you said, he's been up and down. The thing with Beanie Bishop is just his size is just such a liability, and he is doing better this year at communicating. I think Beanie Bishop was part of had some issues as far as relaying stuff and being in the right places last year. I think that's short up a bit, but he's still a shorter guy that's primarily a slot cover man, and I just don't know if that's enough for what the Steelers need right now. They need other cornerbacks that can run and cover. I'll also say Dante Kent. He got injured early in camp, and he's been walking around camp in a boot. So he kind of made the 7th round pick out of Harrisburg. I think that he unfortunately missed the boat here, and he's gonna have to hope to make the practice squad. But yeah, I think that if I'm looking at corner and I'm looking at guys that maybe still got to do a little bit more, Beanie Bishop, James Pierre, those are the 2 guys that I think are really fighting for that 5th spot in the cornerback room.
On the defensive line, Chris, Derrick Harmon has established himself as a starter. Yahya Black, we talked a little bit earlier about how strong his camp was and how he's maybe the first guy off the bench in terms of the defensive lineman, which begs the question of where some of these guys we've talked about for years at this point are going to end up. I think Isaiahh Loudermilk's at the top of that list. I think you can throw DeMarvin Leal in there as well as that tweener that we've talked about seemingly endlessly, but we've never seen him come close to the potential people saw in him. So talk to me a little bit about those defensive linemen who are behind those big 4 that we talk about positively. Where do those guys kind of mix in here as they're trying to make up the 53?
Back when the Steelers drafted Yahya Black and Derrick Harmon, and we got to talk to Carl Dunbar at the end of the draft, and he said something to the effect of, it's about competition. That's why we're sitting in this room, in the draft room. He said, it's competition. If you want to eat, go take your food. What he meant by that was the Steelers are not just going to be sitting around handing out spots to defensive tackles or defensive linemen just because they've been on the team. You're going to have to go prove it. And in training camp, I think there were 4 dudes that, one guy didn't have to prove his Cam Hayward. The hold in, that's a whole different situation. I think Keanu Benton showed that he's one of those guys. I think Derrick Harmon definitely showed he's one of those guys. And I think Yahya Black won basically showing he's the best backup option. And I think Dan Aquale's been solid. But after that, Isaiahh Loudermilk was the veteran that you're hoping that he's hoping to try to figure things out. I think Isaiahh Loudermilk should be looking over his shoulder right now because Logan Lee's been making plays as a second year man. They brought back Braden Fehoko. I do not think that Isaiahh Loudermilk has secured his position as a second team defensive lineman. I think there's people coming for his spot, and that could be something that could be interesting to see. How do they kind of layer out all the defensive tackles in their depth chart and how they try to build this roster out, because you could have 6, you could have 7, you could have different amounts of players, but Loudermilk, I think that whereas I saw him as solidly one of the top 6, now I think he's he could get pushed out of the top 6. And if he's not in the top 6, maybe he goes to free agency.
Yeah, which would be, unfortunate because the Steelers have invested a lot in him over the years, given him, I think he's kind of in that Cory Trice territory of you can't say he didn't get a chance here in Pittsburgh. So it will be interesting to see what the verdict is with him. Last person I wanted to ask you about, Chris, in terms of training camp losers, Will Howard. A lot of people have been impressed by him. A lot of people are excited by him, but gets the injury that takes him out, costs him most of the preseason. What's your expectation level for him, given the injury and his ability to? Obviously, he's not going to see the field unless it's in a disaster situation with Mason Rudolph and Aaron Rodgers, but position himself for whatever comes after this year in terms of you're going to have Mason Rudolph probably back, but then they might be drafting another quarterback. Can he still assert himself as part of their longer-term plans if he gets healthy here in the next couple of weeks?
If he gets healthy and he has a good showing in the final preseason game, that'll help with the long-term plans as far as him being part of the backup quarterback room. But it's tough to say Will Howard's loser because he played so well in camp. Like I was really impressed by him. I thought that I would be impressed by him. I was a guy that was saying that they should have picked him in the 4th round because I really like the way that he operates. But you got to say he's a loser because he went from being the obvious 3rd guy to Skylar Thompson lighting it up in the first preseason game, running the 3rd team offense, and in practice looks pretty smooth doing so. So that's not to say Will Howard's going to be out of a job, but Skylar Thompson, no one was thinking about Skylar Thompson. He was the camp arm. He was the guy they were just having around to have around. And now you're like, wait a second, we can go get who we want. And Skylar Thompson, I think, put up some good numbers in that first preseason game. Will Howard, not so obvious right now what's going on there. So the injury was untimely, unfortunate, but that's where the reality is. The Steelers, they got to figure out who that's going to be most useful for them to keep.
Keep an eye on that quarterback battle as we go into that second preseason game. Going to be here in Pittsburgh. So lots to watch there, lots to watch with the joint practices. So make sure you're subscribe to the channel, get all the news on that from Chris and everybody else. Make sure you like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. I'll be back on Friday with Jason Mackey, our Post-Gazette sports columnist. So look forward to that. Chris, I think you're going to be back Saturday, potentially at some point. So lots coming at you. We will talk to you again on the other side.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.